I'm going to have to find a new intro because it gets more and more sick sounding each time I play it. But if I play 30 seconds of any song, 10 or 15 seconds, all you're really allowed to play, unlicensed. So I don't know. It's one of those things I'm just like, I don't know quite what to do. We need to film an intro or something. So anyway, welcome tonight to the draft edition of Under the Dome. It's finally draft week, and Calvin's already got it going on. The one player fans won't shut the hell up about every year is the one player that won't get picked or just won't be there. And this year it's Olave.
Then go ahead, turn the channel, Calvin.
I'm one of these guys that last year, this time, we kept talking over and over again. It seemed like every week we need a cornerback, we need a cornerback, we need a cornerback. And what did the Saints do? They took a defensive end. 2 years ago, it was I don't know what did I think we were. I think it was a receiver or maybe a tight end. I don't remember what it was. I was convinced they were going to take. And it took a center. So. But this is the first one that we don't have Sean Payton. Look at this, Matt. This is me doing my Brett Musburger impersonation. You're looking live at Las Vegas, the city of sin. Because I don't want people to see. I'm trying a new camera, and I don't want people to see what goes on behind me. So I put that up there.
Do you ever remember a draft in recent memory anyway, where who is going to be taken first overall has been just so up in the air?
In recent memory, no.
No.
There's been some years, I want to say.
I mean, usually they're hyping between 1, 2, or 3 guys that could easily be the first. I haven't heard a single word mentioned about who could go first.
No, I've heard. I've seen 5 or 6 different guys, and ultimately, I think Jacksonville will probably go edge rusher Hutchinson or the kid from Georgia. I think it'll be one of those 2 picks. But I've seen the Oregon edge rusher. I've seen both offensive tackles. I've even seen, in a really wild mock draft, I even saw them go receiver. That's not going to happen. But yeah, I said it to somebody earlier today too. I love this draft's depth, especially at some positions. But I can't say that I would relish being in the top 10.
That's what's interesting. There isn't a whole lot of. There's not that top 10 guys and then a huge drop off. If anything, it's 15 to say 25 or 30. That's really the heart of this draft. In the top 10 or 12, they're like, they got, in regular drafts, they probably be middle rounders too. And, we have a new one here. Casey, is it KCR? I hope I'm saying this right. KCR. The Reggie Bush draft. I think a lot of people thought Reggie Bush was going first because they thought the Texans were going to take him. And
I'm glad they didn't.
When they took Mario Williams, that was kind of a surprise. But Mario Williams was picked to be a top 5 guy. Yeah. I'm probably going to go back to maybe 98, the 98 draft. That was one of those drafts where I think the Raiders took, what was his name? The big tackle ended up getting moved to guard and ended up being a bust anyway. Let me see if I can remember his name. Robert Gallery, I think it was.
Yeah, I remember him from Iowa.
Yeah. And he was supposed to be this great player, and he ended up being a huge bust. They tried him at guard, and he just did not work. Let's see. No, it wasn't 98 then, because that's Manning and Ryan Leaf. Might be 97 then. So I thought Payton was 97 draft. Nope. Oh well. It'll come to me. There was one draft that was pretty weak. And the other one that comes to mind is when the Falcons took Andre Bruce at number 1 overall. That was a pretty bad draft. Yeah, Gallery. It's Robert Gallery, but I just don't remember what draft he was in. But yeah, that was a pretty weak draft class. Yeah, it is weird how, I haven't been watching that much draft coverage, but it seems like there's very little activity about the top 10 players. It's all about, where these quarterbacks are going to go and when does the run and wide receivers go. Bob, when do you think a run on wide receivers would go in this draft?
I think there'll be 2 that go in the top 10, or maybe not top 10, but top 12. Let me pull up my draft list in a second. I can see wrong page. I can see the Jets taking one. They have 2 top 10 picks, and they have a couple nice wide receivers already. But you want to surround your young quarterback, second year signal caller with weapons. I can't see the Jaguars or Lions taking one. Texans, who the hell ever knows what they're going to do? Not even Houston. I can't see the Panthers taking a receiver. I've seen a lot of mock drafts where the Falcons grab a wide receiver and they pick at 8. So the Jets pick at 4 and 10, and the Falcons pick at 8. You have the Commanders, Redskins at 11. I don't think they go wide receiver. Vikings at 12, and I don't think they go wide receiver. Then you're back to Texans, Ravens at 13, 14. Yeah, I think the most likely, barring trades, the most likely 2 spots that we see a receiver almost for sure with one of those Jets picks, and I think Falcons too at number 8 if Atlanta does not get quarterback.
I know it's so hard for me to see or say that the Falcons aren't going to take a quarterback with that first pick. I think he's overdrafted, but I think I've said this from the get-go. I really think that's where Malik Willis goes, right there.
Same.
To the Falcons, just because it's such a good fit for them. The Panthers, I can't see going wide receiver. I mean, not quarterback right there. I think they're gonna go after one of the offensive tackles. I think that's where they go. So, it's if I ran a simulation, and if you start, run the simulation, it's always the same guys. Okay.
Yep.
It's always, Hutchinson going to the Jaguars, Tavon Walker going to the Lions, Thibodeau going to the Texans, Evan Neal, the first tackle, going off the board to the Jets, Gardner going to the Giants. This one has the Panthers taking Stingley, Charles Cross, the second guard, coming off, going to the Giants again. They've got the Falcons taking Kyle Hamilton at safety. I don't see that.
No, I mean, Atlanta has needs everywhere, but Hamilton is a little bit of a reach, I think, for them at that.
So, it's, and this is just PFF. They just go based on their grading. It doesn't matter our needs. They just go on their grading. So, yeah, I could see this. the Panthers going to have to cross just because they know the Saints want him.
Entirely possible.
I've seen, I don't know. Garoppolo, all that trade talk has kind of died down now. So I don't know. Here's the thing with the Panthers. Matt Rule is on an incredibly hot seat. He cannot afford to take a guy that is not going to start right away. And if he goes after Jimmy Garoppolo, that's a lot of money tied up in his quarterbacks because he's still got the big contract that he's given Sam Darnold. So I think Matt Rule needs to go after an impact player, probably on his defensive line or as his offensive tackle to protect Darnold. So I just don't. I don't know if that's going to happen. I've always thought it was funny. I thought the Panthers would go after Kenny Pickett because they thought that the Saints wanted Pickett, so they were going to go get him.
Yeah. Yeah, and if the Panthers do go quarterback at number 6, it will certainly be Pickett. And I just, for as much as I dislike Pickett as a prospect, he seems like a fit for Matt Rule's offense.
Yeah.
In recent weeks, recent days for sure, I've come around to agree with you. I think the Panthers ultimately go with one of those tackles, Neal, the kid from NC State, or if they're gone, either Cross or Penning. I think Penning could go as early as top 10. I know a lot of mock drafts have him going to the Saints, and Penning or Cross would be hard to pass up if either one is on the board when they get to New Orleans. But I think there'll be a run on offensive tackles early as well.
That's the key. I think the Saints are going to have to take their tackle early. The wide receiver is going to be a little bit tricky because if a run starts on receivers, I think it starts right as the Saints get ready to pick at 16. So you're going to feel the pressure to get him. But the problem is at 17 and 18, you're probably going to lose out on one of your tackles that you'd be interested in. He'll probably go either to Philadelphia or San Diego.
Good chance, especially Philadelphia. But let me ask you guys this, because you and I are often in agreement with many things, Alan, and you too, Sean. But this is where we disagree about tackle. I feel that the Saints are in much better position at offensive tackle than they are at wide receiver. I think James Hurst is a perfectly capable tackle. He's not a blue chip like some of these prospects. That's why I said what I said about Cross and Penning before. I will acknowledge that after the top 4 tackles, there's a big drop off. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, after the top 4 or 5 wide receivers, there's still talent there, but it's a big drop off. All of a sudden, you're talking about prospects with noticeable flaws. So my question to you is, if you take a chance and you roll the dice and you end up, because after 16 and 19, the Saints don't pick again until 49. Right. By that point, I think a lot of the receivers, you're talking way down, at that point at wide receiver. So would you rather pass up a chance to bolster your receiving core or your offensive tackle spot based off what's on the roster?
Sean, you go first.
I would say that wide receiver is much worse off than the offensive tackle is.
Even with Michael Thomas?
I have to be honest. My confidence in Michael Thomas is kind of a bit shaken. There's so many variables that are going to come into play here. How is he recovering from that injury? He hasn't played in basically, a year and a half? Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of under-the-table talk about him not wanting to be a Saint, which I don't know whether to believe that or not, but it's entirely possible. Michael Thomas, at his best, is probably the best receiver in the league.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that in the last full season that he played with Drew. If his game can get back to the level that it was then, and he can stay healthy, yes, he's a hell of a player, a hell of an asset. But as you were saying about the offensive tackles and the wide receivers, going from Michael Thomas to your number 2, that's a hell of a drop.
You cannot, even let's just say they signed Jarvis Landry. You cannot go into this season again with Thomas and this collection of receivers behind him. You just can't.
Right.
And knowing that Kamara will probably be suspended, you're going to be more dependent than ever on your passing game to win. Okay? You need receivers. Some fans want to double dip in the first round, get 2 first-round receivers. I think that's a mistake.
I do too.
But I think drafting a guy and then signing a guy like Jarvis Landry, that helps out tremendously. Your offense is upgraded. That said, this offensive line got the hell kicked out of it last year. You know, you lost Ryan Ramczyk, who hadn't missed many games at all in his Saints career. You've already lost, Armstead to Miami. It's not a question of if, it's when Andres Pete gets hurt. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I just saw today that Will Clapp is signing with the Chargers.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. So, you have very little depth. You've got guys like Eldon Greenrich. You've got guys like, Landon Young, but he's only played 1 game.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to pencil Hurst in as a starter, I think you're really endangering yourself to have too thin of an offensive line, to really make it in the NFL.
That's hard to disagree with. But I thought Calvin Throckmorton played some very good football last year.
Yeah.
In my opinion, Hurst, as much as I like Hurst, his better fit is at guard. He's proven to be a more than serviceable tackle. So I see what you're saying. But at the same, if you draft an offensive tackle number 1, he's probably going to be a plug and play guy.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's why you draft them there. Hurst is one of their best 5 offensive linemen as it stands now. So if you sit him on the bench because you draft a tackle, because as much as we would like to see Hurst over Pete, and as much as Hurst should be over Ruiz, that's not going to happen. And I agree with you about Pete. It's just a matter of when, not if. But I think Throckmorton has proved himself to be a serviceable guard. Now, I do agree. I agree that the offensive line, specifically tackle, needs to be addressed in this draft. I'm just saying that I personally, I would check off my need at receiver first, and then see how the board falls to me. And if I get my tackle with my second first-round pick, great. If not, there are other places that I could go, with that number 19 pick, and then maybe I pick up a mid to late day 2 or early day 3 offensive lineman that is at least is going to bolster my depth.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the tricky part about all this. I think you have to go receiver. That's not a question. Tackle, you don't. The thing is that your phone, Sean? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The thing about tackle, if you take him in the first round, you get the 5-year cheap contract, and you got a guy you're probably going to put in there for the next 10 years. And you want to kind of bolster your offensive line because you want to win. You got to protect Jameson. I think if you look at the way it seems they want to build this team. I think they want to build this team around ball control and having an offense that's efficient, that can be explosive, but mainly is efficient. So, what if the receivers you like are gone? You take a tackle at 16. What if you take a defensive lineman then at 19? How do you think that would be?
I wouldn't mind a defensive lineman at all. I love those two Georgia defensive tackles. Hell, I'd be even down with getting a linebacker. Quay Walker, N'Kobe Dean, Devin Lloyd. Any of those 5 defensive players, the 2 Georgia defensive tackles, 2 of the 3 Georgia linebackers, and Devin Lloyd, the Utah linebacker. I am definitely on board with bringing any of those guys in as a first-round draft pick on the defensive side. But my issue, again, you're taking an awful big risk at wide receiver, because then you're sitting on the board. You don't trade. You're sitting on the board waiting hoping for someone to come to you at 49.
Right.
And I don't think, I keep saying there could be as many as 7 wide receivers go in the first round. I actually think it's probably going to be about 5, but you're also going to probably see 4 or 5 wide receivers go in the early to mid portion of the second round. That means that you're down to, taking receivers with George. I've seen people say, George Pickens. I'm a Jahan Dotson fan. Treylon Burks, Christian Watson, even Sky Moore, who I don't care for. Got news for you guys. All of them are going to be gone by 49. So you're taking a hell of a risk if you do that.
Right.
I agree.
That's kind of where I was going with this. If you were to take, if you to skip over wide receiver and wait till 49, you're probably going to miss out on all the explosive players. You're probably, at that point, you may not even take a receiver in the second round, just because the guys there probably be better talent ahead of the guys that are left on the board, and Saints Twitter will explode, But I think that's the weakness of, Calvin saying he doesn't think the receiver class is as deep as people say. I agree. I think it is top heavy. I think it's deep, but the deeper you go into the draft, the more specialized. What kind of receiver do you need for your offense?
Right.
That's the trick you're going to run into. You're not going to run into a class that really has a lot of guys who are the same, and they just have little things that like a some people say, okay, you got John Mechie from Alabama. He's kind of like a kind of like a poor man's. You just pick an Alabama receiver, a poor man's Calvin Ridley, or a poor man's whatever. But I don't think he's that kind of player. I think he's a specialized player that fits in as a slot guy or somebody who is more of a third down guy, not your wide receiver. Your X receiver is going to be Michael Thomas. You just don't have that big physical guy that the Saints want who has the speed. And I think that's where the problem you have with this, with where you're looking for a receiver. If the Saints had 2 bona fide starting receivers, then you could kind of afford to take a guy who's going to be more of a slot guy, and you can groom him to come along. That's just how I feel about this.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, Deontay Harris and Marquez Callaway, I'm not as down on them as other people are. They're fine complementary pieces. You don't want to add another complementary piece or a guy whose ceiling is a complementary piece. And if it's me, I want a guy who's capable of being a number 1 target or developing into one. And to do that, it's got to be a guy that's going to excel inside and outside. Going to be a guy that, with the speed to take the top off of defense, but that kind of a third down mentality where everybody knows he's going to get it, he still gets it, and he still makes a play. That's the kind of guy that they need right now. In case A, like Sean says, maybe Michael Thomas doesn't come back as the Michael Thomas we know, or even B, in Drew's waning years, when a team did manage to contain Michael Thomas, the Saints could do nothing offensively because they had no other receiver. This is a problem that's been brewing for the last 5 years. So, if I'm Pete Carmichael and Dennis Allen, I want to come out of this draft with a receiver that could be a number one target in time.
There you go. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, I've been running various scenarios just to try and get an idea of what the hell they got out there. In this particular one I just ran, Matt Corral lasted to 49. That would be interesting. Matt Corral falls that far. I'm taking a shot on him. I know Calvin hates him.
I love him.
I like him a lot too. I think he's got the best, the quickest release and the best passing mechanics of the quarterbacks that are out there.
If you look at history, we haven't done too bad drafting Ole Miss quarterbacks.
Yeah.
The one, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, before we get into specific names or more specific positions, let's address the elephant in the room. Alan, you mentioned how tantalizing it would be to get an offensive tackle on a rookie contract with that fifth-year option. Well, you could very much say the same thing about quarterback. And even though we all agree that there are no slam dunk first round quarterbacks in this class, certainly no plug and play guys. Unless you have 1,000% confidence in Jameis Winston, how could you not take a quarterback? If one of the ones you like, if you're the Saints, and you like Kenny Pickett, or and Malik Willis or Desmond Ridder, and I think those would be the top three quarterbacks to go. If any of them are still there at 19, especially if you've already drafted your receiver, and a quarterback you like is there, rookie contract, fifth-year option, and I'm not 100% convinced that Winston is my guy yet. Right. Do you pull that trigger?
That's an interesting question.
Where at now we're talking about?
19.
19. I'm talking 19. Say you get your receiver at 16. And
I can't. I really can't. See, in the two drafts I've run where I've taken a quarterback, either a quarterback fell like the kid from Cincinnati, Rattler, or Matt Corral falls. Kenny Pickett fell as far as 19, but I would rather trade down just because I feel like that's where those quarterbacks should be. They should be from about 20 to 32 in the first round, and from about 32 to about 33 to about 40, 45. That's where those quarterbacks should fall, in that range, which, of course, the Saints don't have a pick.
Sorry to interrupt you. I agree with you, but we know that a couple of these guys are going to be over.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. But this is what I'm...
See, I've said this a million times on here. Mm-hmm. There is no bigger thing that you can have than a first-round draft pick. I don't see any of the guys in this quarterback class with first-round draft pick talent. And I look at every one of these quarterbacks as a project, and it is hard to justify spending a first-round pick on a project. A first-round pick is somebody that is going to be making you feel like is going to be making a significant contribution on the field within the first 1 to 3 years. And I don't see that out of any of these guys.
Alan?
Well, here's the thing, though, Sean. You don't have the need to plug and play a guy right now. You've got a guy who is a veteran quarterback that you can win with for now, that you can sit a guy for a year, work with him, see what you can do with him, and then plan to start him next year. I think that's where the Saints' strength is with them choosing a quarterback. Because I think a guy like, if you're in a position to say Atlanta and your quarterback is Marcus Mariota, that's your starting quarterback. Mariota is a caretaker for a few games, not an entire season. They're going to be working Willis in at some point in the season if they take Willis. Okay?
Yeah.
For the Saints, their roster is good enough that, barring injury, Winston's going to start every game this season. And if Winston falters, you have Andy Dalton on the roster.
Mhm.
There's no pressure. You can deactivate a guy that you take in the first round the entire season. That'll drive fans crazy. But you can do that because you're thinking long term. This is a guy that I'm going to probably play much later, not now. I want to see what he can do. I want to get him in the weight room, in an NFL weight room. I want to put some mass on him. I want to see his practice habits. I want to see what it looks like out there. And if I mess up and I draft a guy who's not any good, like the Packers did with Jordan Love, no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
The Packers drafted Jordan Love, and they've gone to the NFC Championship and the playoffs, every year since they've drafted him. He has not taken a significant snap. Is it a wasted pick? Yeah, but at this point, they don't care. They had the luxury. They didn't have to put him in right away and find out how bad he was or how good he was. You had Aaron Rodgers who could carry your team. So it's hard. Yeah. KCR says, I don't have much faith in Winston. I don't think he's the guy. It's not a question if I have faith in him. I just don't think he's the guy.
Although I don't believe that he's the long-term solution. I believe that he's the bridge to whoever's next.
Well, if you believe that, first of all, if I'm drafting for the Saints, I don't pick a quarterback. I go receiver and either tackle or best defensive player available. But Sean, you and I were talking about this before we went on the air. You don't see a team make the kind of move that they did to pick up an extra first-round pick unless you're eyeing a quarterback. At least this is my opinion. And if I'm making the pick for the Saints again, I think that Jameis Winston can lead this team even deep into the playoffs. As it's constructed, right now, if you fill some of those other holes. They don't believe that. And we know they don't believe that because they only signed him to a team-friendly 2-year deal. If they believe that, Jameis Winston will be one of those guys averaging $28, $30 million a year. It's like a tick down, from the top signal. So I think that at least it tells us a little bit about how they feel about Jameis. If nothing else, it's a prove it to me contract.
Yeah.
So now you have an additional first-round pick. You can pick a project, be it Malik Willis. I like Corral. I think we can all agree he's not going to come off of the board until at the very earliest late first round. I had Corral at 19 in my first mock. I had Desmond Ridder at 19 in today's mock because he's the name that's rising up the boards. But plug in name here: Pickett, Corral, Willis, or Ridder.
I think Pickett would be tough.
What's that?
I think Pickett would be tough for the Saints to pass on at 19.
Yeah, and I know, and it'll piss me off. But
I know, but I think if Pickett doesn't go early in that draft, and I think if the Saints see a run on receivers early, and they take a tackle at 16, and Pickett falls to them. See, because what Saints fans who don't want a quarterback want to see is they want to see Pickett and Willis go in the top 10 or top 12.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You need to have those guys go early, and you need the receiving run to start at around 15 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
That way, you still have a pick of your best receivers.
Agreed. But again, you have Winston.
Yes.
Like you guys said, he's going to be your quarterback for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you're going to know if Winston is a franchise guy. Then you pay him, and you have your 2022 first round quarterback. You can now dangle him as trade bait. If Winston isn't the guy, if he's good but not good enough, then by that point you've had your quarterback, rookie quarterback sitting for a year, 2 years. It's time to play him. And this is why you made that draft pick. It's those reasons why I think the Saints will probably draft a quarterback.
Yeah. It's to me, it all depends on how this draft unfolds. I think the Saints need to wait for the draft to come to them. So let me ask you this: if the draft becomes a nightmare draft for the Saints, and receivers and tackles all go early in the draft, and you see edge rushers and defensive tackles falling, okay? Do you try and trade back?
Sean?
I would say no.
No? So because to me, on the back end of the draft, well, first off, I think, your trouble with the receivers too is you got the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs back there looking at receivers as well.
So you have to stay ahead of them for sure.
Yeah. So you have to take one of them at either 16 or 19. You have to take one of them. But it's very tempting for me, if the nightmare happens, and you're looking at, say that, all the receivers you like best, Olave, all those guys are gone. So now you're looking at a Sky Moore or a Mechie, or, I'm trying to think of some of the guys who are kind of more second round. Pickens is gone. Let me
Jahan Dotson.
Dotson, yeah. You look at those kind of guys now who are left. Maybe somebody goes up and reaches for a David Bell or Justin Ross or Jalen Tolbert. But, I just think that when it gets to that point, you start looking at, I need to acquire more picks, and maybe I can fill my roster out at other places.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm just going to have to risk it and see if I can get a receiver much later. Slide down a little bit. Do you think you do that?
Me personally, yeah. No, I mean we're talking 2 picks, now.
Yeah.
One of them is I take the best defensive player available, be it tackle or linebacker, and be happy with that because there's some good players there.
Absolutely.
With the other one, I do trade back. I pick up some picks, maybe even recoup the number 1 pick that you traded away last year, which is, by the way, another reason why I think quarterback is very much in play, because the Saints don't have a first round pick next year. But I have to stay ahead of either Green Bay or Kansas City, if not both. So in other words, I have to trade back no further than like the mid-20s. And if I do that, I'm still reaching for a receiver if that's where I go a little bit. But that's where the Dotsons, probably the Pickens, Christian Watson, that's where those guys will probably go. Otherwise, you're doing what you kind of suggested. Just throw your hands up in the air and go, okay, Kansas City, Green Bay, you pick your receivers, and I'll pick up the scrap heaps you leave on the floor.
Yeah,
that's the scenario for me.
Yeah, that's tough. So, Sean, I'm going to ask you this. do you take a risk then on injured players in the first round? Guys coming off injury. Now I'm thinking of like a guy like Jameson Williams, who's coming off a torn ACL. I read something, this is clickbait shit. So, take it for what it's worth. But, one of these draft things said Wyatt from Georgia is off of people's boards for medical reasons. Oh no, I'm sorry, not Wyatt. Neal, the
Yeah.
Alabama tackle. I'm sorry, Neal. Yeah, I had confused Alabama and Georgia. Sorry. Yeah, Neal's off of people's boards for medical reasons. The kid from I don't know why he keeps falling in all these drafts and end up taking him all the time, but Bernard Raymond or the tackle. Doesn't he have a medical issue? Isn't there a reason?
He had a little bit of a knee problem. I thought the reason why I've seen him all over the board is he's extremely inexperienced. He's only played. He's a converted tight end, so that tells you what kind of athlete he is.
Yes.
He's only played tackle for about a year and a half.
Okay. All right. That's okay. I was trying. I clicked. I did the stupid thing, and I clicked on the clickbait story, and 10,000 ads are popping all in the story and everything else. So. I didn't read it very long, but they just started listing players who are off of teams' boards, which I don't believe at all. Right. And yeah, John, that was my article. But the reason why I say this, and Jameson Williams is the best receiver in the draft.
He is when healthy.
Jameson Williams is a guy who is probably going to start on the PUP list. So you're looking at a receiver that is going to be the best guy out there. I think he is a Julio Jones type of receiver. I think if he has a speed, he's fully recovered. He has a speed back. He's going to be an more explosive Julio Jones type of receiver.
Oh yeah.
But here's the catch on him. He will probably miss the first 6 or 8 games of the season. We just went through how bad this receiving core is. Can you afford to wait for your star receiver, your number 1 draft pick, to not show up until midway through the season, knowing that Alvin Kamara is going to be suspended? And I'm just going to assume this, okay? Because I see very little reason why he won't be. But
yeah,
can you afford it? Sean, I'll ask you. Can you afford to wait for a guy like that to show up? Now, you're going to get a great player later on. I mean, I'm not guaranteeing it, but the odds are extremely high in your favor. You're going to get a great player. But can this team afford to wait for that guy to come in?
I think that there's an argument to be made both ways there. On one hand, no, we really need somebody that's going to be contributing immediately. And then again, on the other hand, you've got that kind of talent for years and years. That flip a coin. I don't know.
Bob, what do you think?
The reason why I had Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson ranked slightly above Williams is because of the ACL. Yeah. Not long-term concerns, not today in today's medical age, but because of the immediate availability. Now, having said that, if Olave or Wilson or both are gone at 16 and Jameson Williams is there, I'm taking them. I am taking them because Michael. Again, I have Michael Thomas back.
Yeah.
I've talked to Jarvis Landry.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm making a strong push right after the draft to get Jarvis back in here. Because you'd be talking not only Jameson Williams missing the first 6 or 8 games, he's also missing training camp. This is basically a red shirt season for him. But the thing is, when Jameson Williams comes into the lineup, while he learns your system, he's still a big play threat. And if nothing else, that's what he's going to give to your offense down the stretch and as you hopefully push towards the playoffs. So yeah, I take I don't think I take Jameson Williams at 16 if Olave is there, because Olave will give you a similar kind of threat, and Olave can play right away.
Yeah.
But it's not going to scare me away necessarily. I know I'm going to be without Kamara also, but I'm hoping to get a healthy Michael Thomas back. That's going to make such a big difference to this offense. And I'm making a hard push. I'm burning up Jarvis Landry's phone lines. I might have to shell out $10 million for a 1-year contract, but I'd do it because Jameson Williams, like you guys both said, he's a player. Damn, I mean, he's a player. So no, I don't let that scare me away. But I take a little bit different focus to my after the draft planning.
I agree. I think Jameson Williams is there. I'm taking him, regardless of whether or not I'm going to have him, because, like I showed with Calvin's comment, it's not about this year. It's about what
Long
you're going
term.
to do. Yeah, what you're going to do long term with this player. Now, what I'm finding interesting right now is you're seeing all these guys who are talking about wanting to get let go or traded away. And the latest this week was Tony from the Giants, who was their first round draft pick last year.
Yeah.
What do you make of this, Bob? What is going on? What happened? Why does he want to leave?
We're hearing, and I got the basis of my own story on it. From a New York Daily News report from one of the Giants beat writers. The Giants had made the decision to start making calls to, hey, what would you give us for Kadarius Toney? So that's how fed up they are with him. It started. First of all, I love Toney as a prospect last year.
Yeah, he was really popular with Saints fans. A lot of people on Twitter wanted to take him. I remember that.
To me, as I studied his tape, there were some red flags as far as injury concerns go. But he's an explosive player. Then he turns around and misses most of, just about all of training camp. First of all, he sat out their mini camp right after the draft because he waited to sign his contract. Giants officials allegedly say that he did that just so he wouldn't have to come to minicamp. Then he missed most of training camp with a hamstring and shoulder issues. Complained about his usage in the offense early in the year. And the story also goes on to point out that the Giants during the year were not happy with his lack of knowledge of the playbook, the fact that he refused to study it, and his behavior, for whatever this means, behavior during meetings. And he was injured a lot last year too. Then they get a new coach, new general manager. So the kid has a chance for a completely fresh start. And he turns around and sits out their pre-draft voluntary, but these aren't voluntary. He sits out their workouts and has not been in contact with the new coach. I think that's the final straw. Now, to be fair, the Giants are one of the most dysfunctional organizations in all of sports now. So there's something to be said for that. I mean, we've seen in recent times, Eli Apple, Janoris Jenkins, very talented players with some sketchy, locker room conduct in their past, end up getting shipped out of New York either by their own volition or because the organization doesn't know how to handle. So you wouldn't think that the Giants would be able to get even as high as a day 2 pick if they deal Toney.
Right.
Then my question would be, if you could get Kadarius Toney for a day 3 pick, would you roll the dice and bring that kind of locker room problem in? Or is that more of just a product of the Giants' dysfunctional environment?
I'm reading some of the stuff as you were talking. Basically, it said he needs to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
He's very immature. Skips things, doesn't, not very good in meetings and things like that. You're bringing a guy into this kind of locker room with a lot of strong personalities in it.
Yeah.
A focused team, but a new head coach. You don't have Sean Payton in there anymore. So, it's one of those things where it's tempting to go after him because of the talent, and you think the players in this team could get him. Hey man, this is how shit's go. This is how shit works around here. But at the same time, I don't think a leper changes his spots. If you're, Dante Stallworth got shipped out of here years ago because they thought he didn't put enough work in compared to Marcus Colston.
Mhm.
I think that's the danger you run into with bringing a guy like him in. So Calvin's pretty much sums up my point of view too. I loved him coming out of Florida too. I thought he would have been a steal in the second round last year if he would have fallen that far, and I was surprised he went as early as he did. But it bombed. He's just a bust. He's going to be one of those guys who's going to bounce around from team to team, I think, and they're not going to be able to. They're going to always be tempted by his talent and not realize he's just not that good of a focused football player.
Another Antonio Brown.
Except Antonio Brown he kind of built his resume up before he went off the rails. He's more of a what was the name of that Steelers receiver that shot himself in the leg because he brought a gun into the club? That
was the Giants receiver.
Yeah,
Plexico.
Plexico Burress. I think he's probably more of a Plexico. A guy who has a lot of potential, can show you something if the team is winning and he feels happy, but then after that it's always playtime for him. So KCR says, do you think they draft a running back late? Absolutely. I think it won't even be late. I wouldn't be surprised if they took him in the third round.
Me either.
Honestly. I think they know what they got with Mark Ingram. Dwayne Washington is your special teams guy. So you need a running back there, especially if Alvin Kamara gets suspended. But even if he doesn't get suspended, I think you need that thunder and lightning backfield again. Take the carries away from Kamara. You need somebody who can pound it. And I think that's the kind of team that Dennis Allen wants to build.
Yeah.
I think he wants a pound the rock. This is why I think they take a tackle in the first round. But pound the rock. We're going to beat on you for 4 quarters with a physical offensive line that's going to push you around in the running game, pass protect well. We're going to take the short passes, dump offs to Kamara, but we're going to pound the ball at you too. And then when you have to start bringing your safeties up because we're running the ball on your defense, that's when we're going over the top. And that's where, unfortunately, that's the strength of Jameis Winston, is really going over the top, not so much the short underneath passing game. I mean, does that sound like what do you think Dennis Allen's going to be like, Bob?
Oh, yeah. Pete Carmichael's going to run the offense, as we know. And Pete likes to open it up, but he's not as wild as Sean Payton was. And we've seen that when Pete Carmichael's had the opportunity to call plays.
Yep.
He's much more controlled, in his shots. I do see it that way. And I absolutely agree. A running back is a must draft. Especially a word came across my screen as we started the show. Melvin Ingram is no longer available in the free agent market. He's re-signing with Denver. So all the top flight running backs that you had an opportunity to get in free agency, are now gone. So Ingram has some left in the tank, but he showed us last year he can't be the featured guy for any more than a game or two. And another thing is, if you have another reliable runner in the backfield, you can move Kamara around make him more of a threat as a receiver, which is something that we didn't see last year because
No.
they weren't able to do that. So yeah, there's a handful of guys that I love. Anywhere from mid day 2 to early day 3. Damian Pierce of Florida is at the top of my list. Pierre Strong of South Dakota State. Man, you click on the film of this kid, you will love him. And I have him going in my mock draft. But I absolutely think that the Saints are going to take a running back, a between the tackles guy,
Yes.
who can keep your chains moving, who reads blocks well, and just is a natural instinctive runner.
Sean, do you think that the Saints need a real power back?
Yes. Absolutely.
Where would you take one? I mean, you're not taking him in the first.
No.
We'll throw that out. But second to the fourth, where would you take him? Just depending on how the draft falls, or
Yeah, if it all fell out just right, I would definitely be interested in finding somebody day 2, second round. I'm sorry.
yeah. I like Strong out of Florida. Calvin and I are the same mind here. We both like the kid from Alabama. Brian Robinson. I think Brian Robinson, though, he's one of those guys that I've seen go anywhere from the second round to the fourth round.
Same.
Just depends on how they have him graded. What do you think of Zamir White, the running back out of Georgia, their Thunder?
I love him. I love him every bit as much as Brian Robinson. Robinson is a better receiving threat, at least as a check down out of the backfield. But White and Damian Pierce are two guys that remind me of a young, angry Mark Ingram. And they have that. Zamir White has better athleticism in the open field, than Brian Robinson does. If Zamir and Robinson were both on the board when I decided I'm going to take my running back, I actually take Zamir before Robinson. But I like them both pretty equally.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way, only because I think, I knew that. That's interesting, Calvin. The hard part about Robinson, I got frustrated with him watching Alabama last year because I felt like he could run harder than he was. I thought there were games where he would turn it on, but it wasn't consistent.
Mm-hmm.
But what I liked about Zamir White is he's, they say his knock is he's a 2-down back.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all we really need is a
Right.
2-down back. His blitz pickup's not very good right now.
Mm-hmm. And neither was Mark Ingram's coming out of Alabama either. He couldn't pick up the blitz and couldn't catch the ball.
Yeah. But a guy who gets between the tackles and lowers that shoulder, I like him better than James Cook. I think James Cook gets the hype because he's got the speed and he's the younger brother of Dalvin Cook.
Right.
But I just really want the Saints to get a guy who can just knock the snot out of people, between those big guards. You run those power plays, even bouncing to the outside, kind of the stretch play. It was like a sweep, but it's really a stretch play where they cut it the numbers. Just somebody's going to hit, just, put the shoulder in and just hit somebody. I just really think that was missing from the offense last year, unless it was Taysom Hill at quarterback. He was the guy who was pounding people. Yeah. So let me ask you, what do you like about the San Diego State running back? What really intrigues you about him?
You mean Strong, the South Dakota State kid?
I'm sorry, South Dakota. Sorry, South Dakota.
I want to make sure we were on the same page.
Yeah, we are. I just couldn't. I just drew a blank on him for a minute.
First of all, he's an incredible athlete. He ran a 4.37 at the combine, and jumped out of the gym, to use that expression.
Yeah.
But he's a north-south runner. I mean, he hits the line like that. You won't see much razzle dazzle from him out of the backfield. He has nice cutting ability once he gets to the second level. I like his video from the tape that I watch. And when you're talking about these FCS guys, it's harder to find good quality tape. But it's my job. So and I do have access to more than what the average person sometimes would. He showed to me very good vision. To hit the hole and avoid that first hit. And he's the kind of guy, he has the feet to make tacklers miss, but every now and then he'll just put down his shoulder and roll through arm tackles or a guy that kind of approaches him, defender kind of approaches him in a half-assed manner. And when he does get to the open field, he's going to take it to the house.
Okay. Sean, let me ask you this. What position have we not kind of talked about all this month that you think, probably is something the Saints could look at? Is there a position that you like?
Safety.
Okay.
Yeah. You're going to have to do something to address losing Marcus Williams.
Okay. All right.
And John Blank.
Malcolm
Jenkins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you brought in Marcus May from the Jets. He's got an Achilles injury he's recovering from, and he has a DUI. So it's likely he could be suspended. I don't know the status of that case at all. I'm going based off of what happened to Deontay Harris, Hartley. No, is it Hardy or Hartley? It's Hardy.
Harty.
Yes. Okay. So I agree with you. It's safety. So do you bring in the Honey Badger? Regardless of what you do in the draft?
If the price is right, yeah. But I'm not going to entertain the thought of giving him some exorbitant contract.
No, not at his age. Not at his age.
No.
Bob, you kind of smirking there. What are you thinking?
I don't touch the Honey Badger. I don't touch him. I see the reasoning. I just have a feeling that Matthew is asking for something exorbitant. And if he wasn't, he probably would have been a New Orleans Saint already. That's why. I mean, it doesn't, I still think he has plenty of ball left in him. Mm-hmm. He'd be a nice fit in this defense now that they don't need a deep safety, presumably with Marcus May. I have a feeling his contract demands are the kind of thing that made Mickey Loomis stand up from his chair, shake Tyron's hand and say, good luck.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, yeah, I feel that I'm like you guys. I feel that safety is something that needs to be addressed. I've got a few. The guy I'm watching in the second round is Jalen Petrie from Baylor. Him. He's not going to make it out of the first round, but Lewis Cine or Kine. Is it Cine or Kine? Cine from Georgia.
I think it's Cine.
Okay. He's somebody to watch. Jaquan Brisker is a third guy to watch. Those are the three guys I'm looking at more than anything else.
Dax Hill from Michigan, too, I'd throw into that mix.
Yeah. After that, you're talking special teams guys. Sterling Weatherford, Reed Blankenship. I'll throw in a guy for my daughter's sake. Percy from UL. Those are guys that I'm looking at, but those are more special teams guys. You're looking for somebody to be an instant starter. Those are the guys you probably need to look at, and you have to take those guys at 49 if you're looking for a starter. And
I think it's entirely possible they do, actually. I had them, in my second mock today. I went with another position that is starting to worry me. The more I think about it, the more it worries me is linebacker.
That's where I was going next. I'm glad you brought it up.
I know Demario's still here, one of the best players at any position in the game. But he's 33. He's going into his 11th year. I think Pete Werner has the makings of a star. He still has to show me something. But as long as Quan Alexander remains unsigned, this is a real problem area when you get beyond Demario Davis and Pete Werner. And there's a few linebackers that I really like, but they're going to have to make a move on them at the latest sometime in day 2.
Well, and that's where I'm going to bring Sean back in. You're an Oklahoma boy. What you think of the Oklahoma guy? Oh shoot! I'm sorry. I got to look up all these names just because.
Brian Asamoah. I know because
you. Thank you. That's the guy I was thinking of. Asamoah. What do you think of him, Sean?
He's good. He's good. He's got good speed, good instincts. He plays from sideline to sideline.
Where do you see him fitting in this defense? Because, for the most part, they've played 2 linebackers. So where do you see a guy like him fitting in this defense?
Oh, Lord, I have no idea. I'm not a scheme guy.
Okay. All right. Bob, where do you see a guy like him fitting in this defense? If this
Asamoah, and I love all 3 Georgia linebackers. I'd love to have any one of them. But yeah, I had Asamoah was my pick in the 2nd round of my mock. I have him fitting very much to Quan Alexander. He's a little lighter than what Demario and Werner are. So Demario and Werner are going to be your run stopping guys who can also cover the pass. But like Sean said, I mean, BA, he just has tremendous sideline to sideline speed. He is a cover linebacker.
Yes,
so
that's where I was going with this.
Early in his career is going to be on passing downs. While he develops his instincts in the running game. I think he's a tremendous athlete, and I'd use him in very much the same role that Quan Alexander was used.
Yeah, I have him kind of like you would end up pushing Demario back to middle linebacker. You kind of have him as a weak side linebacker, or you could play the strong side covering the tight end. If you're in the big nickel. But that's where I agree with you. I think I see him coming on passing downs while he develops his skills, because I think his run recognition skills, he'll probably get eaten up by play action pass a lot early. So, he needs a little work.
Yeah.
I think he and Pete Werner together would kind of be the future of the Saints defense.
Exactly.
But so let me go this way then. Some of the Georgia guys, like Dean, where do you see those guys, they're first rounders? Do you see those guys sliding out of the first round and making it to the second?
Maybe one of them. I expect 2 of the 3 Georgia linebackers to go at the latest late first round. Nakobe Dean is the most publicized. But Quay Walker is a terrific. I actually like Quay Walker even a little bit better as a prospect. He's more of a 3-down guy. It's possible one of those could slip, but it won't be any later than the mid-second round. That's the kind of guy you want. One of those guys, you either have to grab him with a first-round pick or move up in the second. The guy nobody is talking about from Georgia is Channing Tindall. He's a bigger guy with excellent speed. I'd still take Asamoah from Oklahoma over Tindall, but I really love the tape that I saw. Yeah, he's absolutely relentless in pursuit, and he's athletic enough to cover tight ends and backs man on man. But he needs a little bit more experience at it. He wasn't asked to do a lot of it at Georgia.
Okay, we'll throw out Calvin's favorite school, Christian Harris, since he's already throwing this in me too. Calvin, you and I are thinking too much alike. Christian Harris. This is one of those names that I was thinking about. If the Saints doomsday scenario comes across and the quarterbacks and, pass rushing defensive ends are the ones that are falling in the draft, you could possibly trade down a
Mhm.
little bit and get a guy like Christian Harris in the 20s, maybe even in the upper 30s, if the nightmare happens and there's a big run on receivers and things like that. I would love to have Christian Harris on
Yeah.
this defense. I just think that it would be tough to justify getting him given your other needs. But I do think linebacker is an issue for us
Mhm.
because I think we've got a lot of guys, good guys, but guys who are limited to, well, this guy can only play this, and this guy can only do this. And the guys who are really three down linebackers, it's really, really small. Pete Werner is the kind of the wild card in there. But, when you start talking about a Zach Bond or you start talking about a Caden Ellis, those guys are, well, Zach Bond's really a special teamer now.
Yeah.
But, Caden Ellis is a guy who you only pull him on a couple downs. He's not a three down linebacker. So, what's this? I'm glad you guys. I just do a lot of reading, John. I really do. I try watching college football. My son is much more into it than I am. I tried watching college football in the past and go, oh, here we go. Calvin threw this out here.
Calvin, you're absolutely right, and it's what I've been saying. People
Yeah.
were talking defensive tackle, and I could see that. But if they wind up with a Nakobe Dean or a Quay Walker or even Devin Lloyd out of Utah, it wouldn't surprise me one bit, and I wouldn't be angry at it.
But I was going to say, I tried watching college football one year as a scout, a scout mentality. I'm going to watch this game and see who out there really stands out to me and that kind of stuff. It's hard. It is so hard because college football is played so differently than the NFL.
Yeah.
The field is wider, and I say that because the hash marks are so far out.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a wide side of the field that you don't have in the NFL. So it's really hard. And then the teams that you're playing against, unless it's two top teams facing each other, the teams you're playing against, it's really hard to make assessments because receivers are friggin' wide open. I mean, wide open, wide the F open. I mean, they are. I'll never. Guys go into a zone defense. He runs a 5-yard hook, turns around. They ain't nobody around him for a good 10 yards. There's nothing green around him, and whether he catches the ball or not, I'm like, oh, okay, he caught the ball. Rarely do you see a guy catching the ball in traffic, running a shallow cross, safety coming down, nails him, but he still holds on to the football. That's a rare thing in college football to see.
Yeah.
Running backs too. Oh, it's 3rd and 4. Run a draw play. Oh, picked up 15 yards. How the hell do you pick up a 15 yards on a draw play? So yeah, it's hard to watch that stuff. Because you're playing friggin' Vanderbilt. That's why you picked up 15 yards on a draw. So that kind of stuff. But it's interesting, to look at the prospects. I started watching. Well, this is the first name I started following just because his name was. I just knew that this was going to be a hyped up kid because his name was Spencer Rattler. I started watching him. That was the big hype. He's going to be the next big quarterback in this draft. So I start watching like, I'm 54 years old. I can throw a ball better than that. 54 years old, coming off a broken arm on my right arm that I used to throw with. Yeah. So, I'll watch that kind of stuff. I watched Malik Willis. Had no idea he was going to be as hyped as he was. I watched the UL Liberty game, and I'm going, this guy stinks. Yeah, he runs around, but he stinks. Levi Lewis is better than him, but I've seen the other tape of him, and I get why people like him.
Mm-hmm.
But, me watching that game, it's because of the competition. It's that kind of stuff. So it's hard. It really is. Uh, so yeah, I end up buying shit like this. They don't even make, they hardly make any draft books anymore
Right.
because everything's online. But I like having the books in front of me. Mike Detillier stopped making his book, so that I've lost that because that was probably had become my favorite because he had so many players he covered. Uh, I mean, he covered a good 800 players. They're
Yeah.
not going to be 800 players in the draft, but he covered a good 800 players. I I uh I would start looking at his book when the Saints have their undrafted free agents
Yep.
and see, okay, let me see what he had to say about this guy.
Yep.
These books here after round 5, you're running out of players.
Mhm.
So
And I'll tell you, I enjoy I enjoy the draft pieces that I write. I work my ass off for them. My wife has learned the first year we were together was the second year that I was doing this, and she thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Now she hates me, and I hate her hating me. For about a 6 week stretch, because that's when it really, and you guys both know this. You've written. Uh,
oh yeah.
I've written 67 articles. I profile players in 60. I profiled 67 different players in my articles so far this year, and I try not to just hit the top guys. I enjoy watching the small school guys, the guys that could be late round steals. Because a they're enjoyable to watch, and b it makes me look like a friggin' genius if one hits. Uh, but yeah, there is no way. I have so much respect for what Mike Detillier did for so many years. Because like you said, if an undrafted guy, or even once it gets to late day 3, and you have nowhere else to go, yeah, you could go online, but it was always nice to grab Mike's book and flip through it. And I won't lie, I don't consider it plagiarism, so I could admit this. I would usually start doing my draft profiles in the off season by grabbing Mike's book. I'd have an idea of what schools or what players or specifically what positions that I'd want to start with. But when it got down to the late round guys, I know what I'm looking for, but you don't always know the names. You know what schools to look for. We all have our preferences. I love Penn State, Florida. Sean's in Oklahoma, Texas Tech guy. We all have our preferences, in other words. But outside of that, once you're outside of your comfort zone, you need a baseline to go to. And that's why, Detillier is kind of a mentor to me, because I want to be that baseline someday. But I'll tell you what, by the time Saturday afternoon gets here, I'm a walking friggin' zombie, and I'm already exhausted that I could barely finish a full sentence.
Well, then last question tonight, because as usual we're at 120 and counting. I started watching the NFL draft in 1988 when they drafted Iron Hayward. So I have specific memories of the draft. Uh, it was a lot of fun in those early days. It's kind of become a big show today.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun because so many things happen in the draft now that was unscripted. I find it's a lot more scripted today, but that was unscripted, like the "Who the hell is Mel Kiper" exchange. That was such a classic one. What are some of your favorite draft memories from watching the draft in previous years? Sean, I'm gonna hit you first since you haven't had much to say tonight, but I'm gonna hit you with one. What do you remember in the draft, and what kind of stands out to you?
I think the first draft that I watched was 1981, 82 maybe.
Wow, you go back to the original days.
Yeah. And I remember the 83 draft. Uh, there was a lot of talent in that draft.
Oh yeah.
Um, I remember the trading away your entire draft to get one player draft. We won't talk about that though.
I have a story about this, John, but go ahead. Keep going. I got a story about that one.
Um, and the draft that we referenced earlier, where we got Reggie Bush, and nobody saw that coming.
Not the night before. The night before, I went out to eat that night, and this is the early days of the internet and phones, and things like that, and people's phones were starting to get the message that the Texans were getting, you know, Mario Williams, that Reggie Bush is going to be available. You could see people looking at their phones, and they all start commenting and talking to each other, and that kind of stuff was all. You could just see the buzz in the restaurant. People like, "Did you hear we're going to get Reggie Bush? Yeah, we can get Reggie Bush." So yeah, that was a special draft. Real quick, and then I'll go to you, Bob. The We Want Sap draft. That was 1995. That was the day I got married. Okay. In that day, April 22nd of 1995, the Saints had a draft fest in the Superdome. Now I'm already downtown because we're getting married at Sacred Heart Church on Canal Boulevard, and then the reception will be at La Pavillon Hotel. So we're already staying at the hotel. We got nothing to do all day. The wedding's at 7:00 at night. So my dad, my brother, and I go to this draft fest. We could go watch the draft over there.
Mhm.
So we're all standing around, and Warren Sapp, the news, the reason why he slid was supposedly he got flagged for marijuana. He failed a drug test. So he's dropping down the board. The Saints are picking 13. They're right there. And, the Jet fans are all chanting, "We want Sapp. We want Sapp." And they got a tight end. I think they got Kyle Brady or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. They didn't get Sapp, and I miss the draft being in New York with the Jet fans there because they were great. They were great. Between heckling the Giants fans and then watching them get a terrible draft pick when they all just lose it, that was always fun. But yeah, it kind of, we're all sitting around watching the TV screen. They set this old 1970s cathode ray tube, vacuum tube TV up for all of us to watch the draft. They got to adjust the horizontal. When you turned it on, the little white dot came before the picture warmed up, the whole bit. I even yelled to Mike Detillier. He was there at the time. I said, "Did you get that TV from Hank Stram's office when he was head coach of the Saints in the mid-'70s? He liked that joke, by the way. But, yeah, Buddy D and Mike Detillier sitting up there with the TV, and Sapp goes past 11. We're picking 13 now. Tampa's at 12. So fans like going, "We want Sapp? Do we want Sapp? We want Sapp. We'll take Sapp," So yeah, we got real close to having a "we want Sapp" moment right there. So I thought it was funny because I was right there. I was like, hell yeah, I want Sapp on this team. So we got Mark Fields instead. And my wedding video, because I was mic'd up in such a brilliant move, I'm nervous enough already. So I'm going to start babbling. We're standing there at the altar, and it's a quiet moment. I leaned over to my wife and said, "You know who this thing's drafted in the first round?" My wife's face, she rolls her eyes and looks at me like, "Are you serious right now?" And I look at him like, it was Mark Fields, a linebacker from Washington State. And then later on in the wedding video, I tell her, "And they got a fullback from Notre Dame, Ray Zellers." So yeah, she's looking at, "Are you serious right now?" So yeah, it's recorded for all prosperity.
Nice.
posterity. Me telling my wife who we drafted that day. But go with your favorite draft day memories.
Well, first, I'm going to give myself a shameless plug, if I may, for the third straight year. And yeah, Jimmy Gumbo, Edgar and James, the Edgar and James Ricky Williams saga is one of my favorite draft memories. But for the third straight year, Saints News Network will be providing live coverage throughout the entire first round of the draft. Myself, Kyle Mosley, John Hendricks, Brendan Boylan. A couple of us might tag out for a bathroom break here or there, but we'll be on for the duration. Day 2, the guys will be checking in and out. I will be at a wedding with the wife, so I'll be doing. I won't be a guest of honor, but I'll be doing what you're doing. I'll keep checking my phone and things like that. So make sure you tune into Saints News Network. And I'll provide the live feed on my page too, Facebook and Twitter, at least throughout Thursday night. And we'll check in and out with you as well on Saturday afternoon. So yeah, make sure you check us out. Al and Sean, I know you're busy Thursday night, but if you guys are free, check in. If you're free to come on air, we'll bring you on air too. You know that. But yeah, I mean, my favorite draft memory, 83 draft, sticks out to me not only because of the drama and the quarterbacks, but that was, given the age that I was, that was the first draft that I could really say that I really knew these college players because I'd watched them throughout college. So I knew who Jim Kelly was, Eric Dickerson, Craig James, the Pony Express, big Penn State guys, so Todd Blackledge, Kurt Warner, those guys.
So you saw the Cal Stanford game live.
Yeah, actually. And as much as I thought Elway was a tremendous player, count me among the legions of people, that thought he was a crybaby, because right after that Cal Stanford game, the first words out of his mouth, at least during the interview, was, "They ruined my final game." So that left a bad taste.
Oh my God! Yeah.
But then through the mid and late 90s and early 2000s, I had special interest in the draft because there were a couple kids that I either coached or coached against in track that were drafted. LeVar Arrington being the most noteworthy. But me and a couple of the kids on West Allegheny's track team. LeVar ran track for North Hills. Tremendous sprinter, by the way. We actually helped him out, training for the combine, because he'd come out of Penn State as a junior, but he kept in touch with a couple of my track kids, and then about a week before the combine, 2 weeks before the combine, I get a phone call at home, from one of my kids, and they'll always be kids to me. A couple of them are in their late 30s now, but they'll always be kids to me. And they were like, hey coach, what are you doing on such and such a day? What do you need? Well, LeVar, LeVar needs help training for his 40 time. Okay. So I mean, little stuff like that sticks out to me, because these were players that I either coached or coached against. But the drama has started to go away from the draft in recent years. Thank you to Lusitania sinker Roger Goodell.
We haven't done that. We haven't done that in a while.
Right. But I miss those days. Like the last real dramatic draft I can remember was, again, it surrounded quarterbacks. The Roethlisberger, Rivers, Eli Manning draft. Where were these guys, going to go? Because outside of Eli, you didn't really know, and Eli was the key to that entire dysfunction, really. But yeah, I miss those dramatic days. I miss the days where you could turn on, and again, this didn't endear myself with some of the ex-girlfriends in my life. Maybe this is why they were exes, because when the draft was in one day and started at 10 o'clock in the morning and went until 1 or 2 the following morning, you better believe I was watching every minute of it. I was writing down every pick. notebook paper all over the place because I was throwing it because one of my teams didn't draft a guy that I wanted, that kind of thing. I do miss those days.
One of the things I remember the most, and speaking of, showing how much time has passed, the Byron Leftwich year, when the Vikings let their pick pass.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I had ever seen that happen. And teams start running names up there because the Vikings are trying to get a trade done and the clock expires because, back then it was 15 minutes in the first round. So you got 15 minutes to make that trade, and that clock just counts down. And the Chris Berman was talking, because I watched ESPN back then because that was who was still broadcasting the draft primarily. Chris Berman's talking, Tom Jackson's talking, all these people are talking, and the clock goes to zero. Well, the clock goes to zero all the time, in the draft now. Goes to zero, and you would expect any second now the commissioner's got to walk up to the podium, make the big announcement. The pick's in. It's just a matter of waiting. Pick wasn't in, and they're all like, "Okay, so the Vikings are going to pass on this pick." And I'm like, "What? How do you pass? What are you doing?" And I can imagine being a Vikings fan, and I kept saying to myself the whole time, "I cannot believe." In the entire Meekum era, the Saints didn't do this first.
Right.
But, the Vikings pass, and you start seeing them running up with cards. This is who I'm taking. And I remember it was, Jacksonville going up there, getting their quarterback. Teams running up there with cards. The Vikings are like, whoa, we got our pick. I'm like, get your ass up there then. So, that was always – that was a memory that always sticks out with me. And Aaron Rodgers.
Pete Rozelle's face if something weird happened or a team was about to make a shocker. Watching Pete Rozelle's face just grin ear to ear before he announced the pick was always great too.
Well, he would always mess with teams, because with the Jets, he'd go in '83. New York Jets on the clock. The Jets select quarterback, and then he pause on purpose, and then you say, Ken O'Brien. And, because they all thought they had Dan Marino, that kind of stuff. And, then he kind of smile as he walk up like, he was trolling before trolling was a thing.
Right.
And, I also liked when there was no players there or very few players, because I'm thinking about, the year Aaron Rodgers slid, he was supposed to be the number 1 or number 2 overall pick. Alex Smith goes number 1. Aaron Rodgers starts sliding, because once it got to, I think 10, there was no more teams that wanted a quarterback. So they knew he was going to slide for a while. And now they've got like 40 people there. So even round 2, day 2 picks are there. And that's part of the show I don't like anymore. I liked because now with the players there, you can't talk shit about them. None of them do. Right. It's really bad. Like when Mel Kiper got pissed off because the Colts didn't take Trent Dilfer like he thought they should. Well, this is why the Colts just don't get the draft. Or, this is why the Jets just are always picking the top 10 because they don't know how to draft. They don't do that anymore. They really don't. And I miss that. I really do. It's
all the more, again, I'll give myself a shameless plug on the way out. All the more reason you should tune in to our coverage, because you damn well better believe I'm doing it.
It was fun. It was fun, So those are probably my favorite memories of the draft. That I just don't enjoy it the way I used to. I miss Chris Berman up there. I miss Tom Jackson. Chris Berman and his taxi cab driver from Buffalo, New York, who always knew who the Bills were going to pick. His insider information for the Bills. So anyway, all right. So we got Smoky Man here from X-Files. deep throat in the parking garage, ready to meet Bob Woodward. Sean, any last
Yes.
thoughts? Any last thoughts before we sign off for the night?
No, not really.
Deep thoughts, with Sean Williams.
I just hope we don't screw this up.
That's what Calvin started the show with. I'm right there with him. We've been talking about Olave. We've been talking about receivers, about tackles. I think we covered every freaking position you could possibly cover. I don't think the Saints are going to take a center in the first round again, but expect the unexpected, because I don't know what kind of draft this is going to be for Dennis Allen, because a different kind of team. Different.
Yeah.
It's the same people, but it's not Sean Payton pulling the strings. We may get a San Diego State running back. We may get a South Dakota State running back. I should say, not San Diego State, unless we get and bringing back Marshall Faulk. We're not drafting someone from San Diego State. But yeah. And I agree, Calvin. He says, watch Olave be one of the first receivers taken off the board. Probably,
He could be. I expect it's going to be Garrett Wilson, Olave, maybe Jameson or Drake London are going to be the first off of the board. But out of those four, I'm pretty sure at least one will be available at 16. So as long as the Saints get one of them, and I'm even okay if they reach for a George Pickens too. If they get one of those wide receivers, then you can make sense about anything else that you would do in the draft to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was going to ask Bob your last thoughts. I mean, anything that would shock, surprise you, or just piss you off?
The one thing that would absolutely infuriate me is if they trade both these picks to move up to get anybody, but especially if they do it to get Kenny Pickett. I would expect I'd lose my job. And you don't want to be anywhere near me for the next probably couple of days. Like I said, other than that, get one of those top damn receivers, and you can make sense with anything else. And also, we're going to find out exactly how the Saints feel about Jameis Winston in this draft. The speculation will be over.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I think that the thing that would piss me off to no end would be to trade both those picks to move up in the top 10. And then drafting a quarterback like a Willis or a Kenny Pickett, that would piss me off, because that's a total waste of assets.
Yes.
Because, I'm all about acquiring as many picks in the top 50 or the top 100 that you can. And that would be inexcusable. So I would not want that. Yeah. Unless they can somehow move up. My dream trade is that the Saints somehow can swap pick number 16. I know people are not going to want to hear this, but pick number 16 and maybe their 6th round pick to the Lions for the Lions' 32nd and 34th pick. I'd be extremely happy with that.
I'd be happy with that.
Because I still think you can get somebody. You have to take your receiver at 19. But I think you can get a good tackle with one of those picks, or a high-ranked safety with one of those picks. And then you're picking at the top of the 2nd round. It's just, that would be ideal. But we'll see what happens on that. Anyway, thank you guys for sticking with us. Hour and 40 minutes into it. We'll break it all down for you this time next week. We'll know what it is, and we'll have the undrafted free agents, the whole bit. So, this will be the second to last show. Sean's gonna be like, I wish they'd stop talking about these guys. I don't know who the hell they are. We have the undrafted guys to talk about next week. So, in the meantime, and then rookie mini camps in 2 weeks. I think it's the second week after the draft. They have rookie mini camp. So, because they have 3 camps this year because they have a new head coach. So, anyway, it's a lot still to talk about. In the meantime, thank you for sticking with us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.